order. Okay, let's see, this is Wednesday, February 16th. Please join the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would you please join in the silence while we think about soldiers and those who are working for our safety in all sectors of the world. Thank you very much. Is there anybody here for public comment?
You have the summary in front of you.
Yeah, I have the summary. And that's the,
No, there's no other
Oh,
copies of the
okay.
agenda.
The open meeting general budget
Oh.
is scheduled 12:05. So we should see,
Dan Gallagher.
well, we have the budget discussion first.
Okay.
Okay, so he's not here till 1. So on the budget discussion, we all got a copy of my summary.
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on that?
Let me, actually, I'll give you a hard copy of it. And
This is the,
I gave some backup too. In the back is some of the detail on the, IT budget, just so you have it, so that the numbers have some context, because the numbers have a number of different elements in them. So you had a chance to look at it. Basically what I've done is I've identified all the new initiatives and the budget issues for 2012. And look at each of the department and the positions, any new positions that they've asked, and then any other new initiatives or requests that they've made, and I've listed those out and identified them by cost, and either a general fund cost, a capital fund cost, or another fund cost, such as the Cape Cod Commission Fund. So you have all those in front of you. I've been saying to each of the department managers that new positions are going to be extremely tough to swing this coming fiscal year. So I think that's going to be, obviously we still have the several $100,000 in the budget as requested to close in terms of the gap. And you see that if we funded no new positions, I'll just make a highlight on the Human Rights Commission coordinator. It's about $240,000 or so. We had those up. The Human Rights coordinator, all of them exactly. The Human Rights Coordinator, they've asked that position, two things: become a employee position and become full-time. Right now it's funded at about half-time. It's funded at about $28,000. So
As an employee or as an...
they've asked that it become as an employee. Right now, even as requested, it is in the budget as a contractual individual. So why I didn't add that $52,000 actually into the $240,000 that I just mentioned. That's why I wanted to say that. So
okay, so the 15,800 down here below on Human Rights Commission, does that add back to this?
no, that's separate items. They've asked for additional funding for miscellaneous things.
What is the
for
total amount that
operation.
they're asking for?
They are asking for a total of, they have $28,800 right now, and they are asking for $66,800.
I will
for next
take
year.
your copy because when I printed mine, it didn't come out the same way.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. I should have done it this way. Like so. Harder to see that. I should have
Oh,
changed
yours
the
is all
font.
messed up.
Yeah, it got
Oh,
messed
yeah.
up now that I look
When I
at
printed
it.
this off, I don't...
It's because I printed him to fit on one page, and if you didn't click
Yeah,
that little box.
and I didn't do
then
that,
it's
so
gonna come out
this is easier to read.
So, one thing I would mention in terms of trying to close the gap, I do think IT needs some help. I just think that this next fiscal year may be the wrong time to provide that in the form of a new employee. So I would probably add to their contractual services budget some money so that they could continue to do some things in that manner.
Why would it be difficult to add another person?
Because a contractual person you pay money to and you don't have any fringe benefits. An employee kicks in the fringe benefits.
So you're saying you have to put the money there to bring someone in?
Oh yeah,
not necessarily
on a contractual
new employee.
basis. Yeah,
Okay.
like they actually have been doing that
They
this
act
year.
as a buffer between us and the person,
Right.
so that we don't add to head count.
He's brought Peter in as and that's been very helpful. He's also brought Ryan in as a contractual person, so he had assigned some specific tasks. So I think long term the need is there, and we're going to have to bite the bullet. I just don't think 2012 is going to be the year that we're going to be able to do it.
Okay, do you have any, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that we ought to really, there has to be some tie-in to the Opencape. And I agree that maybe there are services that need to be performed, and maybe the time to do that is now with contractual services. And then as this evolves and the Opencape moves forward, then it might be more clear as to what we need in terms of employees. But once you have an employee on hand, I mean, if you want to change it, it's a lot more difficult to change it as it evolves. And we're still in the early evolving stage, I think. So for that reason, I think it's better to use contractual services for the time being. I agree with that.
Sheila, do you have any comment on that?
I tend to agree with Pat, and I think it would be interesting to talk with Dan this afternoon to see how we are looking at the future, and if we can provide contractual assistance, then I think that's not a bad thing to do. I wouldn't want to hold up progress going forward.
Yeah,
and
no,
I think they need their
I
equipment.
think the IT piece is less to do with the Opencape, because really the period that we're talking about, 2012, Opencape's going to be doing the renovations and the building. So really, I think it'll be after that, 2013,
exactly.
that you're absolutely right. Kind of the Opencape implementation kicks in, and that those questions I don't think have been answered yet.
No, and when you have everything on the ground, it's much easier to see what your needs are going to be going forward.
Okay, so,
And especially a wide area network, that's something that could be done on a contractual basis.
Yeah.
all right, so that's basically your recommendation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Is that something we can all support?
I would,
Yes.
if you come back with with the costs.
Yeah, that will. Yeah, obviously that helps close the gap. So, and I'll come back and I'll make some recommendations about how much I put in IT for their contractual services piece and that type of thing. So,
Okay.
the only other one that you might want to take a look at is, I know Children's Cove has asked for the family services advocate. They've asked for a part-time position. In the past, when we were fully funded through the state with the $130,000 from the, it used to be DSS, now I forget, Department of Children and Families, I think it is now. We did have a family services coordinator and a family services assistant in the budget. We haven't funded those for a few years. I think the need is there. I'm just not sure the resources to fund it from county money is there, but yeah, that's another one you might want to consider.
What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not quick to do that.
We did include in this year's budget the $65,000 from the Department of Children and Families. And remember, over the past 2 years, we've kind of gone back and forth where we had it in and then we didn't get it, and then we put it in, then we got it back, and blah, 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 and it gets to be very confusing. So
Okay,
it's in there right now.
All right, is it in there in anticipation of being supplemented or complemented by a state, that state?
The 65 is assuming we're going to get that from the state,
Okay,
and
what
that's covering
happens?
existing salaries.
All right, so what we're saying is we're actually proposing a contingency budget based upon anticipation of that money.
No, I'm assuming that we're going to get the 65, because last year we assumed we didn't, and then we did, and blah, 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 and it created a big mess. Whatever it was, Bill, it created a big mess. So I'd rather assume that we get the 65 than worry about it if we don't. If we don't, then we would go back with a supplemental.
Okay.
That's what we did.
You had another question, Shirley?
Oh, okay, I just wanted, so we gave them 65 because one of their programs was being cut. This was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And as it turned out, they got it back.
Got back.
So, I mean, I know the whole problem of that. Then we let them have that, it went towards their advertising and that sort of thing. So if we put it in, and the state comes forward, so that means we'll have an extra 65,000 to take a look at.
No, the opposite. It's this year, in 2012, I'm assuming the state is going to give us 65,000 to pay for Children's Cove existing staff.
Okay, and so we're just, so we're putting that in as a state revenue,
Yes, correct.
not as something we're
grant
putting
program.
forward and thinking we may get reimbursed.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that sounds fine to me.
It alleviates that whole problem that we ran into.
Exactly.
Kind of doing it that way.
Yes.
Okay, Pat, do you have any comment on that? Okay, is there anything else on this?
In here is the 25,000 for the county commissioners that we spoke about last week, so that is in there.
And and we're all in agreement that that's for
Professional and technical
the
services.
services that we have access to without having to go for supplemental for
Yes.
things that occur, not at random, but occur, and we would want to act on it on a fairly quick basis. Like, for example, you want to go to that conference in May.
All right, so anything else?
And
Also-
then the 50,000 for the Arts Foundation does represent an increase that we're putting in.
Significant increase, and I do have a hard time with that.
I don't
My
agree
personal
with that.
feeling would be I would use that 20
I
somewhere
think we
else.
should reduce it to 40.
I would say 35.
What do we did when we do
I'm
that?
with Sheila on
increased it
this
to 30 last year from 25.
I agree with 30.
And I think if we're going to increase it, I mean, quite frankly, I'd be happy just to leave it at 30. Because we have a lot of requests on internal stuff, and we really have to be looking at where our priorities are for our own employees and assisting them to do their
I agree.
job correctly. And Human Services needs some backup, and they've never requested it before.
Let's hold this till later,
Okay.
until we get through all the rest.
Right.
Okay.
Good idea.
Because that's a very good point. We don't want to diminish our own capacity to do what we need to do
Right.
at this point either.
All right, so we'll look at this again
We'll
at the
just
end
look
of
at
the-
this one at the end of the
Okay,
discussion.
fine. What other areas you want?
Well, now we're on IT, and I have to say I do support the IT's budget increases, other than the staffing pieces.
What staffing piece are you opposed to, the tech or the
One that we-
administrative?
Both, we just can't do positions right now.
Okay.
So-
In terms of the...
But the other items, the summer interns, I think that makes a lot of sense. That
I do
gets
too.
some, bodies in the ground in the summer that really help with, kind of some of the mundane tasks. I think the overtime makes a lot of sense. They are not exempt positions, and really, I think that's a wiser use of staff than filling positions sometimes is through an overtime allotment.
I'd only have one question with regard to staff. We're tasking them with accomplishing a certain level of performance. What happens to that task responsibility?
I think what I'm going to do is propose that in their professional and technical services where they have some contractual money, to increase that by, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000.
So, and you're using, or presuming you're going to use some sort of supplemental contract support for site-specific or...
Yes, for specific functions, specific tasks.
I think in the IRS code, there's a special section on people who work with computers, computer
Right,
employees,
yeah.
that they are exempt.
For that particular purpose, yeah, because
Yeah.
you bring in contractual IT people all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I think some towns are fully staffed with contractual people. They just hire an IT person to do that stuff, yeah.
No, but what I mean is that the employee is exempt from the requirements of overtime.
Oh, for overtime.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what level. I haven't looked at it in a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Well, we'll have to look at
So, you might want to check the IRS code, even see if it's still there.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's kind of difficult for me to understand that.
It's the nature of the work.
Yeah.
It's the nature, if it's professional.
Well, right now, when we don't have an
consider
overtime budget, we're
professional.
basically giving them,
Would that be a question to
Comp
put to
time.
somebody like Mike Morris? As
no,
far
it's a
as-
question for Bob Troy.
Yeah,
Both
yeah, it's the IRS code. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Now, I know that we're looking at the organization, and if that's, my understanding of them is they were exempt because they were basically employed, with the exception of John, who would be the
Now, there's
department.
certain
Right,
employees that are exempt, and there are computer employees who are exempt from overtime because they're considered professional. They're added to the professional group.
Right.
So, it's a Bob Troy question.
Okay. All right, so you have to answer this question before we go forward.
No, I'm proposing that you fund the overtime, period, end of sentence.
Oh, we need the overtime anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
But whether certain people are exempt from it is
Right.
a different question.
All right,
Right.
fine. John didn't presume that he was going to get overtime. did he?
John is an exempt employee, he doesn't get overtime, he gets a salary.
All right. All right, is there any other issues on here?
Not on IT, you know, I think the major pieces that you have under the capital fund, that's the backup that I've given you, and you can see kind of what elements are in there. I think I've gone over these pretty carefully with John. The Windows 7 upgrades are in here, all the Microsoft Office pieces in here. I think more and more frequently you get attachments in Word or Excel that you notice that your computer's translating now. So I think that makes a lot of sense. That's that's close to $100,000 in here. We need to kind of bite the bullet on some of these things. So I think all of the elements in here, I'm convinced, are needed and necessary. And
Just
got to bite the bullet on
explain
something.
to me what this is. BlackBerry Enterprise Server.
In order to do, John told me what that was, and on BlackBerry devices, which we have a number of in the county, including yours, in order to do a couple of things, you need to have the server piece installed. So he's proposed that we get that.
So this isn't the, was it the Wi-Fi? that we talked about?
No, it's not one. That's completely different. Yeah.
And where in this budget is that Wi-Fi contained?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
And if it's possible to put it in sooner rather than...
I believe it's under the wide area network piece, the 198,570.
Is there any...
Yeah, I talked to him about that.
Okay. I'd like to see that sooner rather than...
It's campus-wide enterprise wireless. He's got
Okay.
on the 198,570.
But I guess...
Yeah, I talked to him about 11 and 12 in the commissioner's office
Yeah.
and the commission. I know
As
there's a
let's
commission
say, as an
issue.
interim.
Yeah,
thing before
exactly.
we go
Just to
forward,
get it
because
done.
we may not be able to swing the amount of money that's involved here, but I can't imagine we wouldn't be able to set these two spaces that we spend our time in. And I think that would answer a lot of questions with regard to access to improve our productivity.
Yeah. So, and
Did you
most
have
of
any
the
questions on
IT
that?
pieces would be capital, as you
Do you have any
see.
questions on that?
No, I think that, I think that we've covered it, and I'm fully in support of beefing up our IT. I think it's,
Okay.
overdue.
All right. The vehicles we talked about, I think they're...
Cooperative extension, I'd probably do one new vehicle this year, one next year. That's what I would propose. Let Bill pick whichever one he wants. Health has a vehicle in there that I'd recommend that we do. He's buying a pickup. So that's two new ones.
The lab equipment, I think, is a moneymaker, right?
Just skipping down, I do recommend that we do the lab equipment piece. That's the
I'm back
emerging
on the, I'm
contaminants.
still back on the
Go back, yeah.
cooperative extension.
Oh, yeah.
The boat?
Yeah, that's,
I
yeah.
think we know what we do with
The boat, sure. It's like a rowboat. We're
Is
not
that-
talking
oh,
about.
I'm
We're
sorry.
not talking
Yeah.
about a cigarette. It's a, it's a.
No?
No, it's a
It's
little,
a Carolina skip.
yeah, it's like a
of
skip.
course.
Oh,
That's
I
silly.
thought we could offer rides in the cigarette,
So, no, it's not
You
one of
just want to wear
those.
your captain's hat.
Yeah.
And how about facilities?
I don't think I have that.
I do recommend the facilities, the HOC window replacement. That's pretty necessary if you've been up to the offices there and have
Yeah.
looked at the windows. It's expensive, but I think if we're going to use that building, at least even for a medium term, it's probably a wise thing to do. There may be some money, not a lot, from the energy efficiency program. They can contribute some of that. You don't get a lot from windows because it's not a big saver, but the paving, I think, up there is necessary. Have you seen some of the paving up there is in tough shape? The water main, that's part of the whole county complex piece.
The question I had is, does that cover does that take into account some of the relocation we're talking about?
Yeah, that's what and it actually provides the sprinkler service for the new lab.
Yeah, we
which
did
have
speak
to-
about that, didn't we?
We've been working on fire alarms in other buildings, so registry, second district, and house of correction.
We
Those
don't
are the
have any
three we
choice on that.
haven't done. You always have the discretion not to fund something as a municipal official. But we've been doing them in this building, registry of deeds, and first district. So this is kind of a continuation of that program. I would recommend we continue it. It just makes sense.
Do you have any comments on that? Okay. All right, what else?
Now we're
Now we're back to
the Health and Environment Department, so the pickup truck I recommend we do. And I do recommend the lab equipment. This is that piece of
Yes.
equipment, the emerging contaminants
Yeah.
piece. This will position us to increase our revenue stream and to respond to the questions that are being asked about those very things that are out there. Human Services, and I apologize about my misspelling there. Beth has asked for additional professional and technical services for, to do programs at Human Services. I think that makes sense, although I'm not sure I'm going to be able to afford the entire increase that she has in her professional and technical services, which is the increase is that number, the 128. So I got to talk to her a little bit about what.
Okay, I would be guided by her opinion because
Yeah.
In the time that she's been here, there hasn't been any example of
No,
what I call frivolous.
I agree with you 100%. She's done a terrific job. She's a.
Either one has one.
It's just how much can we afford, and I think she's always reasonable about those types of things too. So, Human Rights Commission again is part of the additional funding. That's for supplies and materials and telephones, and I think there's a special project request in there, so they have an amount of money to do a special project. I think that was $7,000. That's a policy call. How far do we go with the Human Rights Commission?
I'm not even clear about where we ended up on the first section with that.
I'm
with the coordinator.
not too. I think, are we going to propose to increase that to full-time but keep it contractual? That's the question. I recommend.
I'd like to avoid the word full-time but keep it contractual and say, are we interested in increasing the amount?
That's correct.
For
That's the question.
For that service to be contracted.
That's the question.
And right now, what is our budget for that?
$28,800.
So
Period. And
proposing
it just
to-
about all goes for the coordinator position for Tom. For now Tom. We had like 3 different coordinators there.
I know
So
that the history of this was that this was supposed to be a volunteer effort, and that they only wanted recognition from the county in order to carry out what they did.
well, I think it was supposed to be self-sufficient eventually. Eventually, we kind of wean off the county, but
It was sold on the basis of being self-sufficient from the beginning. After it was inaugurated, then they asked for the assembly to fund it, and although they've increased their request every year, it's been pretty much level funded.
I think we've only funded 28.8 every year since I can remember.
Yeah, I think actually that's a little bit more than the beginning. I think it started at like 25.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
but in any case, the question is, you go from 29,000 to about 73. So that's a considerable jump. So the next issue that comes up is what is the scope of services that that support an increase in the amount of applied time?
Kind of I look at it, and no matter what was intended, now we have a reality.
No, I get that.
It is what it is.
Okay, but the question is, right now, what is the compelling evidence that supports a $50,000 increase in that line item?
Well, it's not 50,000 in the increase, it's about a 28.8 minus 52 minus 28, what's that? 18,000?
No, but they're looking for,
So that's 18 plus the 14.8.
You're looking for 52 plus 26. That's 70,
28,
that's,
38.
No, but they're not, no.
28.
They want to go from,
oh, so we're not
52.
talking about the benefits.
I took those off the table. You're right. Actually, Bill was right if you include the benefit number there.
Okay.
But I sort of took those off the
All right.
table, assuming
All right.
that you're not going to make this a position.
Right.
So the question then becomes is, do you make it a contractual amount that you're dedicating $52,000 to, plus some element of, supplies and materials and stuff,
Okay.
which I have to say, some of that I have to recommend. Of the 14, I got to recommend some, because right now, basically you're paying a person and you're not giving them you're not giving them a
Right.
pencil or a pen or something. So
Right.
that's silly. That just causes heartache for Beth.
And they do, I mean, not only do they reach out to the community and try to provide legal services and advocacy,
Advocacy.
well, not
Not legal-
but
not
direct
legal
them to,
services.
but direct them to legal services. They do the academy, the youth academy and these types of things, which are really pretty remarkable, and it does take a lot of energy, effort, and materials. So that day alone, I think, is a costly event that they do each year, and I know they do a couple of them. So I do think that they need some money. I tend to agree with Mark. I wouldn't want to make it a full-time position, because then you're beholden to that full-time position. And Jackie is now she's now part of the state organization of this, and so maybe there are ways, if we can work with them, that there could be some funding through the
How old,
state.
how old is this organization? How many years has it been in existence?
I'd say 5 years, because
That's
they
what I
passed
would
it
say.
down in
And
Wellfleet.
Dr. Fields has been part of this all that period of time.
Right.
And I've seen no evidence of any money changing hands because of that.
Right.
Just a question.
No,
Well, it's a tough,
I agree with you
it's
saying
a
that
tough
they're being
environment, you know what I
recognized.
mean? It's a tough environment at every level.
Right, and these are the areas that they're cutting more easily.
Here's what I'd recommend, put my bean counter hat on. Let's put 35 to the position, split the difference on the materials, so it's about 7,400 on the others. And
What's
I
the
would
bottom line?
imagine, I would admit, there's no rhyme or reason to any of that. It's just,
What's the bottom line you're proposing?
so that would be 35 plus 7, 4, so
42.
42, 4, which is up from 28.8.
Well, I think that's good, and I think that after next year, and having them work with that, they can get back and let us know what they were able to accomplish by having these additional funds and additional supplies.
They might be able to generate.
Rather than, and maybe, and maybe that might even generate some other opportunities.
Don't forget, they have obtained kind of some in-kind
Yeah.
support.
Mhm.
They have the office space in the
Council
in the
churches.
council churches, and I think they're providing the phone service. So there's some that they've been able to kind of scrounge together stuff, as a lot of us do. So you all right with that?
I'm not comfortable with it,
No?
but at the same time, I don't know what the alternative is, because it's more money. You're establishing an expectation that more money will be coming later, and you're basically looking at a change. Our policy has been up till now, and you've been part of that for the last 2 budget cycles, of level funding it. And at this time, they've come in and asked for more, but they always ask for more. So my question is, what has changed with regard to the operation that supports the additional funding? Especially since you'd already brought up that we have to go back and look at some of these other requests.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest to you that the money for the Arts Foundation is money that supports employment and supports livable income possibilities. And that's why, personally, I am in support of that. Have we got any evidence of an increase of the amount of concern with this issue on the Cape?
And the human rights
In other words, has there been an increase in incidents? My impression was that we had seen a decrease in that area.
Yeah, I think that would be, I happened to miss their report to the commissioners, so I'm not sure what they stated, is that they did go over their caseload, how many people they saw, you would have to...
But don't forget, a lot of their function is also kind of both the advocacy that you use and the educational piece.
Right.
So they do the, what do they call it, Bill, with the high school kids?
Yeah, it's the youth academy.
The youth academy, so there's, I think that, those are all worthwhile things.
They certainly are.
So, I'd have to say, given the limited resources that they've had for years, they've done a good job, and I can't say that it's money that, we haven't seen that we've gotten anything out of it.
I'm not suggesting
No,
that
I know
they
you're
have
not.
delivered, but I think that, I'm very concerned that as we look at these, that, what I call the cold light of day, that there isn't anything that has been asked for by any of the departments that doesn't have value. And I guess the decision is, do we place more value on increasing their resources versus increasing resources in areas that contribute directly to our mission?
If I may pose the question, the Human Rights Arts Foundation, they're not really departments. They are efforts that we're supporting and that we have endorsed. Would they fall under the category, would we consider them the same as our health department or our cooperative extension or the human service department or the commission? I don't look at them as departments that really go to a core function, that way we may be reorganizing ourselves towards. So,
if you're suggesting it, although it's not discretionary, it moves in the direction of discretionary expenditure, I would like, if we're talking about that, I would like to put more money in Meals on Wheels, for example, because I could see some benefit, some tangible benefit of actually feeding somebody with it. But again, there are three of us, so
Right.
each one of us have an opinion on it.
well, I think that we have to sort of make it clear that we do view this as something that we support, but is it part of our function to carry, the entire load?
Well, in the beginning, when this argument was made, there was something called the Massachusetts Against Discrimination.
Right.
Okay. And they are the only, MCAT, are the only organization, what is it?
MCAD, Mass
MCAD,
Commission Against Discrimination.
Mass Commission Against Discrimination. They are the only ones that are authorized by statute in order to carry out action on a complaint, both to evaluate the value of the complaint. At that time, there were, as I recall, when I looked into it, there were approximately, from Barnstable County, about 2 complaints that were finding their way up to MCAD per month. And after the period of time, I guess the first year, when they reported on what they were seeing, I didn't see any comment that there were more than that were being forwarded for consideration. Now, that doesn't mean that the 2 that were sent up to MCAD actually were acted on.
Mm-hmm.
The issue was, how long does it take for MCAD to act? And I haven't seen any indication as to whether or not there's been a facilitation and a decrease in that amount of time. The other piece is that they were supposed to, by counseling and advising, sort of stop somewhat, because that's what the Section 3 of the ordinance, G, basically says that they are an agency that somebody could go to help. I understand an issue,
Right.
and they would be responding to things in a general way. And by the way, after we finish with that, I have to get your opinion on that complaint that we got from Sandwich, from an individual in Sandwich. Okay, so anyway, but going forward, it's a numbers game. We have so many dollars in order to to send out. Is this where you want to spend our dollars? So I'll put it to you that way.
I think I would like to put it on, I think I'd like to take a look at the overall needs of everyone else and kind of put that at the end of
So
our
you want to go
priority
back and
list.
revisit this after we've looked at everybody?
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
I
I
would,
would
just to
agree
see,
with that.
because
Okay.
even if
because-
we do fund it, I see their need, I see that, if you start something and you're just beginning to gain ground, you kind of need that other push, but, that other push is going to be pushing to another $100,000 in another 5 years from now, so, it's not really part of, I really think that we're looking at ourselves internally, and I think that we're looking at ourselves to be very relevant in the big regional areas. I think it's good to support these efforts, but I think that we have to bring other people in to support them as well. The towns benefit from this. It's not just one town that these complaints are happening in. So there could be,
Well, the difference between this Human Rights Commission and the towns is the towns operate under a statute that requires them to have someone within the town that operates as a human rights or civil rights. It's usually somebody in human resources. You probably had somebody in your office that was assigned to look at
Yeah.
complaints, civil rights complaints.
yeah, I think
They're generated out of employment, and that's essentially where, within municipal organization, there's something that already exists. As complaints generate in the community, in the private sector, that's what MCAT was supposed to address. And they, at one time, there was an office in, was it New Bedford? Well, anyway, there was an office that was in southeast Massachusetts, and there was one out in Springfield, I think, that that was there to respond. But at that time, the towns that had someone that was designated as a community human rights person, with the exception of the city of Cambridge, which had somebody, and you should probably remember this because they had somebody on, not fair housing, but rent control, and they funded that to about $150,000 a year. But that was the only one that had someone that was funded and designated to do that. Everybody else was sort of an afterthought, and it was funded. I don't think anybody that I had looked into, and I looked at about 17 or 18 towns that had more than $1,000 or $1,500. In other words, it was stationary, and pencils, and it was an extra
Right.
duty.
And you want them to be a little bit more effective than that, but
Well, I think that their human rights academy with the kids has been successful.
it's been very successful, and it's something that's needed, and it's something that, I remember those types of exercises in high school, and they don't have them as much in high school.
Yeah, they don't
so-
have parochial school down here.
Well, I know. Well, I'm sure they might still do it in the parochial schools, but that stuff was drummed into your head. And,
It was called catechism.
yeah, it was yes,
Yeah,
and
we made-
doing for others before you do for yourself. But,
Okay, well, you suggested we look at this after we look at the...
yeah, just to
Okay,
take a
why don't
look
we
at our
drop it
overall, what we are
for
going to
now?
expend and what do we
Okay,
have,
now-
what
okay,
are the
let's go back
proposed
to,
amounts.
I
I'll put it in the
what do we-
category with Arts Foundation.
What do we all agree to? I guess that's what I'd like to ask
Do we
you.
have to go, have we done the commission and the assembly and everything?
There's one, the big issue down there, of course, is this whole legal services piece, as you remember, both in the commission budget and in the Water Protection Collaborative, there's $100,000 each to deal with this whole issue that's noted there.
What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that,
We did
that,
provide a supplement right now that we have spent some money on it, but we did a total of 100,000, 50 county, 50 commission. That's still in existence.
I think we need to fund it.
I do
Because
too.
I think something will come down the pipe.
Well, okay,
I was not necessarily too concerned, but I think with all of what's happening, and some towns moving forward and other towns not doing anything, and the regional issues the regional solutions have far more importance than individual town solutions at this stage of the game. And I think that we do need to fund it, and we have to be ready.
well, let me ask you a question. In looking at this, and we talked about wanting to fund some type of support for regional evaluation, if you were given a choice at the assembly, for example, as to whether or not we should put aside funding for this and under this area of control versus putting money for this under some type of a support for regional services advancement, which has a higher priority?
I would fund this. And I'm totally for being able to respond to those regional needs. And I think we still can, and we can do it through the commission. We can, maybe, we still have the DLTA funds and that sort of thing. So, but this is something that isn't necessarily going to be spent, but it's there, and it's there quickly if we need it. It's very much like, we have some money available without having to go through the prolonged you can respond in a much more flexible way, and
And we funded the collaborative in terms of the other pieces to it that need to get done.
Right.
Some of the more regional efforts,
Right.
not only related to planning, but also the financial planning for it. So there are funds, and they are prepared to work on that.
Mhm.
But I think we need to have this fund available.
yes.
So that whatever we need to do, we have to be ready to do it. And
Right, because we don't know what, I know that there's lots of talks going on, but
Well, would
we
we
don't.
spend $1,000 all at once?
I'm sorry?
No, not all at once.
But
No, but it's gonna be put in a reserve in case they need it, so it's not, I mean, it's there in each category so that if there are issues to go forward on, it's accessible for them without having to wait a couple of weeks to have our endorsement, to have the assemblies. I think that money is put aside and they can carry out
you're not
tasks
suggesting
that
we
we've
give a carte
given them.
blanche to,
Oh, this isn't carte
I don't think it's
blanche.
carte blanche, I think they have to come and tell us, but the money is there, so
Yeah.
as they need it, we can just draw on
how
it.
fungible are these?
Well, those would be in the budget, they'd be appropriated, so they'd be
Right.
available to spend without any.
As
further
they
action.
need
Well,
it,
how
and that doesn't
fungible
mean.
would they be to transfer if we wanted to transfer money? If
Well,
we saw
they'd
some
be
evidence
in-
it was over.
They'd be in the Cape Cod Commission's budget, and they'd be in the Water Protection Collaborative budget. The Commission's budget is a Cape Cod Commission fund. The Water Protection is a general fund.
Okay, so we're not adding to the Cape Cod Commission budget?
It's already in there, it's in
It's
their
already-
budget.
okay.
It's in their budget.
Yeah, yeah,
I will say, though, that since part of this exercise was to try to close a gap, it's sort of, it's the fact that that's not going to come off the bottom line makes the answers on the HRC and the Arts Foundation a lot simpler, because you got to cut somewhere.
All right,
You
so
know, that's the question.
If you're committed to holding that, then I think that we shouldn't increase the HRC or the Arts Foundation. Keep it at 30,000 and keep the other one at 28,800. I mean,
Might
that's-
be able to do a little something for the HRC, just to get them some supplies, material.
Yeah, I think we could increase it a little bit, but to go up to 50, not this year.
So,
Okay, how do you feel about that?
Same.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think if we get through this year and see, let's see with this next fiscal year and see how things work out. But I think that our situation here is not only drawn the attention of the state, but it's also drawn the attention of the federal government as well. And I think we have to be ready for that.
yeah, wastewater.
I agree.
On the wastewater
Okay.
issue, yeah.
All right, so I think I have some pretty clear
Okay.
direction in here, and I'll bring something back next week that puts these pieces all together.
Well, looks like we're almost on schedule.
We're almost done, yeah, and it has to be submitted to the Assembly
Yeah,
a month from today.
Ron Burks
4
was
weeks
asking
from
about that this morning,
Yeah,
as to whether or not we were on schedule, and I assured him
yep,
that we were.
Sounds
and
good.
We would like what he saw.
yeah, I didn't think that there were going to be too many issues, so I believe we're looking at about maybe $24 million, $24.5 million budget.
It doesn't look like it's going to be.
No, probably 4% or so, maybe a little bit.
Are you comfortable with the 4% increase?
I don't look at it in terms of percentages like that. I look at it in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with the budget.
Well, Pat, you're absolutely right.
And the revenues are there now, and so it's not like, and the needs are there. So I don't think we're doing anything that we ought not to be doing. And it may be resulting in a certain percentage, but it's because the revenues are there, and we're not expanding the revenues.
Right, and I would,
And we're not using all the revenues that are available to
no,
us.
and I would comment that we are not proposing to use or expecting any year-end general fund balance from this year, although there might be in fact some. And we're not using any other treasury balance like a reserve fund or anything, so
No, I think it's
continue
prudent.
that. It's a balanced
To do what
budget.
we're doing.
And I
It
think
meets
we're
our
focusing on what we
current
have to be.
needs.
We're in agreement with what, so you're going to get back to us with these,
Yeah, I will compile something on Friday and send it around to you folks, and we should finish it up on Wednesday, that should be the goal.
I look at it that the county has really sacrificed itself many times for a lot of these initiatives and a lot of other people's requests. And right now, we do have the IT, we have
Yeah.
wastewater issues, we have, we have some internal needs that
I think over the
really, we
past
need
3
to take care
years,
of
we
the
really
inside
had to be
first.
bare bones. This year, we were able to put some money back in to some of the, supply and material and professional services budgets for each of the departments. And I think we'll do that a little bit more next year.
Okay, well,
So
so
we'll be-
you'll do that, get it along to us, and then we'll move on that. And
All right.
let's see, we have a few minutes.
Although,
Let's see, 1 o'clock.
Good.
Are we ready?
yeah.
Okay, perhaps we could just look at the needs action and just move on. Does anybody have any questions on any of this?
No.
Okay, hearing no questions, entertain a
I will
motion.
move that we accept
Is there a second?
the summary.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
It was a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start signing them. And on our agenda, we have a discussion with Dan Gallagher of Opencape on potential for jobs creation on Cape Cod, specifically from Opencape. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let me first of all say thank you to the commission for your generosity in allowing us some temporary office space over at the commission building. It's been absolutely essential to us and very helpful to allowing us to get things done until we get a more permanent place to live. So thank you all very much, and to Paul as well for that.
You got a ton of free tenants, Dan.
I know, we do.
It's not good.
Talk about taking care of the home.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
This question comes up a lot. When we first submitted our grant application, we were required to provide some analysis of how many jobs might we create. And the federal government requires me to report every quarter on how many jobs have been created that I can account for. It's a difficult thing to do, to come up with a model of determining how many jobs have been created. In our case, and several other grant applicants in 2009, was a study that was done by a Cornell University professor who had a model that projected how many jobs would be created by expenditures in the development of infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure. And we used his model to project, and it was, I believe the number was 223 direct jobs during the period of our construction, the expenditure of the $40 million, and about 196 indirect jobs. The differences between those two are that the direct jobs are more someone on the street here on Cape Cod, someone, a carpenter renovating that building up there. Those are the direct jobs. The indirect jobs are more things like, for example, we're going to buy $3 million worth of fiber optic cable. That's more than likely going to be produced by a company like Corning Glass up in upstate New York. Those would be considered indirect jobs. Someone had to manufacture all that fiber optic cable, so $3 million creates jobs. So he came up with, I guess if you could round it out to say 400 direct or indirect jobs during the construction period. And honestly, I like to tell folks that, if you just use a figure of $100,000 per year per full-time position, it does come out to be about 400 jobs that will be created during the period of our construction. And how does that practically happen? So I'll give you, for instance, we signed a contract with a company called UC Synergetic from, they are in Mansfield. This is a company that does engineering, surveying of poles and conduits, and all that preliminary work you have to do before you can put fiber optics on a telephone pole or in a conduit tube. And we struck a contract with that company for $1.3 million over the coming 2 years or so. And what does that result in their company is, this is a company that was very much engaged in the Verizon Fios deployment, which Verizon has stopped throughout the nation. They're no longer deploying any more Fios. So that was a big effect on that company. They laid people off. Then they got a contract from us. And that contract enabled them to return some employees who had been laid off, allowed them to more fully employ folks who were working in their offices and still had a job, but were under risk, and to hire new people. I know one person here on the Cape, frankly, that got a job from them doing engineering work. So that's how the jobs are produced now during the construction period, that we hire people to do things for us, whether it be engineering or surveying, or another company we use here on the Cape is Horsey & Witten, an engineering company in Sandwich. They did a lot of the environmental work for us, did a very good job. Obviously, that's keeping their people fully employed with jobs, allowing that business to be more vibrant. We use Nutter, McLennan & Fish down in Hyannis. This is our law firm. We pay them fees. It keeps people employed. So those kinds of jobs are being supported as a result of our capital expenditures over this period of construction. And I think you'll see more of that as we receive the lease from you all and begin we'll put an RFP out to renovate the building in general terms. We're going to spend nearly $4 million on that building. And that's carpenters, that's electricians, that's plumbers, that's laborers. When we're putting the fiber optics out here on the telephone poles and we have to cut into the road, that's laborers who dig trenches and people who lay pavement, and all those different things are the kinds of jobs we'll be doing during the construction period. So when we finish this up in the winter, spring of 2013, the $40 million having been expended, and now what happens after that? So directly for Opencape, there are jobs that are created, obviously. People need to maintain that fiber optic system. People need to run that regional co-location center up on the hill. So you will see jobs created to do those things. So I think we can look to that as one source of job creation as a result of the projects. Someone has to maintain it, someone has to operate it, someone has to market and sell the services. So there'll be companies that are doing that. So that's directly. Then there's the indirect result as well, once it's built. What other companies will use that system to develop more services and sell them here on the Cape? I think we'll see more, the result there will be more jobs as well. The number is not really a predictable thing, but there was a study done by a woman named Sharon Gillette at MIT, who now works at the FCC. She's pretty well known in Massachusetts government, actually. She said in general, this kind of infrastructure development can have a 1% increase on the GDP of a region as you do it. So you can look to that sort of a thing as well as how the impact occurs on the region in terms of economic development and job creation. Because ultimately in the long term, it's about those long-term jobs being created by businesses that are developed, enhanced, remain on Cape Cod. And that's really what we're all about, that how do you do that? How do you create new jobs by new businesses being created on Cape Cod? And this will enable that to happen to a great degree. Companies particularly, as we've all talked before, historically in 1850, if you didn't get a train station in your town, you didn't grow. In 1950, when President Eisenhower built the interstate highway system, if you didn't get an off-ramp, you didn't grow. And in the 21st century, if you don't have this kind of fiber optic infrastructure, you're not going to grow. So we know what the impact was of building a Route 128 or the whole national highway system or the train and rail system in the 1800s. The same thing is true for the coming century, that if you don't have this kind of connectivity, the ideas that you develop, because they travel throughout the world, you have to have this kind of connectivity in a very big way to really participate economically. And that's where we expect really the longer-term job growth to occur here on the Cape, because in general, and I think you'd agree with this, the Cape has a spirit of entrepreneurship, and I say a culture of creativity, which is perfectly suited to the development of intellectual capital, of ideas. Because in this century, where the ideas are developed can be independent of where the production is and where the customer is. So you can develop ideas on Cape Cod as businesses and produce the product in India or China and have your customer be in Europe. All those things are possible, and this connectivity will allow that reach to occur. So, and I think there are some good examples of this kind of industry that we're talking about. Again, people come to Cape Cod to get the wonderful environment and that we have here. But we don't want to have high-impact industries, necessarily. So you look at a company like Back Office in Harwich, Massachusetts. That's the kind of industry we're talking
I have
about.
a question to ask about that, because unfortunately, I'm a chairman of a housing authority, and one of the people that, I don't know their name, but I do know that they were laid off from Back Office, and so they lost their opportunity for the help we were given with the buy-down. And so I became concerned. I had our director look into it to find out whether or not there was a downturn in the business, and apparently there was, because the guy was not fired for cause. It was because there was a shrinking of the business. And what concerns me with that is that, have you seen any evidence of those kinds of businesses sort of, let's say, constricting?
Yeah, I think those kinds of businesses suffer with the economic downturn just like any other kind of business. Though I think, in part, the reason that Massachusetts, frankly, has not suffered as much of the rest of the country when it comes to unemployment and lack of jobs is because we are more focused on that information type industry. That if we were, far more engaged in the housing industry, for example, a la, a Nevada or an Arizona or a Florida, the impact has been tremendous there. We've been somewhat shielded and protected by our focus on high technology, information-based jobs. So, but they also have suffered during this downturn. So you're going to see that within any business, I think.
And then that also leads to another question with regard to your own administration and overhead on your present operation. You're running basically a $42 million operation, and you have 4 people? Three people. So
You must be making a heck of a page.
you may or may not, but my observation
I know.
is based upon my personal experience. When you go above 10 million, you have to start looking at what kind of an internal operation do you have in order to administer that successfully and also reach the potential that's intended.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if, as to how you feel about that.
I feel very comfortable with our size, and we largely chose to go down the path of using outsourced companies for the larger part of this, because once it's built and the $40 million is expended, it's a very short period of time we have here, 2 years. You then get to the point of operation, and so I said, what does it really require for us to operate over the long term? 3 to 4 people is enough, actually, because we're not delivering the services directly, we're licensing private companies to do it on our behalf. So they are the ones with the larger company and the overhead and stuff.
Okay, so your strategy is one of horizontal integration in order to deliver the service.
That's correct.
Rather than avoiding vertical integration and increasing your overhead because
Absolutely.
of that. Okay.
And we've used very, very capable companies, and we put an emphasis, when on all our contracts, there's a request of all the companies that they use local people, hire local people. We have requirements that they look to apprenticeship programs that can be created here and stuff like that. But we've used Nutter, McLennan and Fish, law firm here on the Cape. We use Cape Cod 5. All this done through RFPs, by the way, to choose our bank, Cape Cod 5. We have outsourced our accounting to a company here in Massachusetts. We use an auditor here. All of those functions that you normally might see within a very large, mature company, we have decided to use very, very strong and large companies with an expertise. And that's really proved to be in our advantage to have that, because there are so many different things. For example, if we had a staff lawyer, they could never address all the many, many technical communications, corporate law, government contracting that you can get with a larger firm. And the same is especially true, we used Horsley and Witten in Sandwich for our environmental assessment. We were the first grantee to receive a finding of no significant impact from the federal government under these programs. We could not have done that if we had hired staff ourselves to try to develop that environmental assessment. Mm-hmm. Better to go to experts and let them do it, particularly when we know we're going to transition operationally.
The Nutter, McLellan, and Fish one is appropriate. The Horsley Witten one is appropriate. But I'm talking about the internal organization.
Right. We rely really on that. So all we have is myself as the CEO. We have a construction manager who is the person who really goes out and ensures that the physical progress of each of these companies. They say they're going to invoice us for 3 miles of fiber optic installation. This person goes out and validates that that work has been completed and completed correctly. Mm-hmm. And we have an administrative assistant for handling all of our contract handling and stuff like that. And we've found, frankly, that not only have we done well, we're doing better than most people who have large grants throughout the country that have major existing overhead.
I once had a responsibility of being a contract administrator for the federal government when I was in the service. And I remember that I had to go about physically count the amount of engineers on my job and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But the issue is having enough people to actually have that oversight, because if you're building a building and nobody is looking at when the roof is being put on, it leaks later. Yeah. The question is, why did it leak? So I think you get what
yeah, sure. Concerned about. And in fact, in particular, in regard to the building, for example, the model that we're using here is our RFP will be for a construction manager who will act on our behalf. And they will be the ones that issue the subcontracts and monitor the performance on those subcontracts on our behalf, and we'll be providing oversight of them. So that's sort of the model, rather than us, again, for us to go out and hire an architect independently and all the subcontractors, we don't have the capacity to do that. So the model which is here is to have a construction manager who works for us, who monitors the overall project on our behalf. That's the model we're using here.
And they also have the expertise of what to look for. and
Okay.
It's
You can
very-
understand what, you know.
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody, do you have more to tell
No,
us?
that's,
Okay.
any questions you might have for me?
No?
Where are you now?
In the downstairs of the, just moved into the downstairs of the Cape Cod Commission building last
Oh, okay.
week. And so there's 3 of us over there in a small little office, which is more than adequate for our needs right now. We estimate that once we start renovating the building, it's going to be a couple of months here to get the RFP out and answered and awarded and all that stuff. But the construction will take about 6 months, but we'll put a focus on getting us in there. Again, we'll be on the first floor. So I think, you know, in the fall, we'll see us moving up there.
Okay. What resources that you need are being made available from here other than the space?
Well, the key thing is, honestly, is communication among us. Because, so for example, I met with John from the IT department a few times, as well as folks from the county sheriff's office. Because you already have some existing infrastructure here, it goes through that building that's up there. How do we all work together on this? So as we did that, we tore, you know, when we're going to come in here with the fiber optics, do we need to put in new conduit? Or do you maybe have excess capacity, an open conduit that we could go into? Do you need more conduit space while we have the ground open? You can throw yours in there to adequately address your needs for your network. So we've been working very closely with John and the others here at the county to make sure, and Mark, to make sure that we're all addressing our common needs, and you know, even other issues related to Opencape. Mark and I have met with other folks to see how do we work together to make sure we're all getting what we need to make this all happen.
Yeah, it's really John Morris and John Blaisdell, I know, have been in touch with these guys, and they've done a lot. And I know the sheriff had quite a few people at the meeting the last time the story I heard, so. Protecting his interests, which he should
Sure.
be doing. He's
And
got
you're,
some
and you're being
communication
responded to, I mean, now the lease is set, we're signing it all in place today, but those things are all going forward and
Yes.
timely.
Yep,
At
and
this
honestly, I mean, my plan at this point is, now that the lease has been signed, that within a week, we'll issue an RFP to renovate the building.
Great.
Now, there's some requirements that we have it out there for so long, as you know, and that sort of
Right.
thing. That's gonna slow us down a little bit.
That's
but
fine.
But that's what you have to do, and we'll choose someone as rapidly as we can and start work.
Excellent.
Now, what will the sheriff get from this operation up there? Well, his tower is still there? The
Yeah,
tower is
so
still there?
but that's isolated, we're not gonna go, we're staying away from, it's called the communications room up there. It's for the tower and their communications, it's sort of in a separate room up there. So we're not gonna renovate that, we're staying away from that to protect all the communications there. But the sheriff has other interests related to, just like anybody else who runs a network on the Cape. He's got facilities up there at the BCI, he's got facilities over at Otis. He's got, you know, those kinds of things can be connected over our network. And so I think he has a real interest in those kinds of things to serve his needs.
Would you say that the first step would be to support the public safety network?
I'd say it's all, the economic side and the public safety, the whole municipal, town, school, library, and public safety will all be addressed simultaneously. As the network is developed, all of them will begin to get their services as part of the construction. There's no, you don't have to bring one or the other. The priority for them is really on, in a crisis, what happens, who gets the priority, and that's going to public safety.
Are you in contact with clams?
Yes.
Okay.
And I meet regularly with all the chiefs of police and fire, EMS, on a monthly basis, actually, to talk to them about their needs.
One of the things that had been brought up at MMA with regard to libraries was the possibility of identifying libraries as being headquarters spaces for, during times of emergency. So, if the Opencape lives up to its expectations, they would have that, capacity for serving that need at that time, as well as, during ordinary.
Well, we chose them for a different reason. We're connecting as part of our build, as part of the capital expenditure here, is to connect 70 buildings here in the Cape. And those buildings are, we chose them for very specific reasons. All the regional shelters, which happen to be schools, which is a good thing. We get a double bang there, right? The other one is we chose libraries, 30 of them actually, because we said, where are those who are least able to buy a computer or pay the expensive cost of internet service? Where do they go to get what they need to participate in the economy or the government or anything else? They go to the library. We wanted to make sure that the libraries have the best possible access to internet connectivity. And so we chose 30 libraries as part of that group of 70.
Your next step is to convince the state in their job support activities to make that user-friendly so you can actually get past the refund. Most of the libraries in Clams have reference librarians that are very knowledgeable with regard to helping people that come in there now to guide them through that process. But the software that's used for job search is not very user-friendly.
Yeah.
So I think that's another piece that, in terms of coordination, and any of the librarians can probably tell you where those gaps are. And perhaps if there's more capacity available, the state might be have an interest in living up to the expectation that we have that they're supposed to support the job search in this economy for people.
Sure.
Is the fiber being hung now? Or
Right now, the company you'll see out there now is UC Synergetic. You'll see their trucks and vans maybe. So they do, the first process you have to go through is to get a license from the pole owners, which here on the Cape, the poles are jointly owned by NSTAR and Verizon. So I have to submit applications for a license, and this is a very extensive process, let me say. And so UC Synergetic, working on our behalf, they go out and survey these poles. They have machines that can, as they drive by, take a picture of the pole, measure all the wires that are up there, and things like that. And then they have a negotiation with the pole owner as to what happens to happen to the pole in order for us to put our fiber up there, because you may have to move some up, move some down, that sort of thing.
There's a space requirement on it.
Right.
You have to have a separation between the power and the communications. There's a lot of rules related to this. So the first step is to survey all the poles. The second one is to apply for a license with the company, which we're doing now. And the third is they then make the corrections. They call it make ready. It's a process of making the pole ready to adjust the wires so that we can be accommodated on the pole. Then they turn it over to us as a license. They say, the pole is yours under license for this point on the pole, and the pole is prepared and ready for you to put your fiber optics. Then our other company that we're going to make a contract with to actually build and put the fiber up there will then come along and install the fiber optics. But that probably won't start happening until June.
Verizon had dark fiber on quite a few of these poles. Is there any possibility of co-locating your fiber?
Well, we choose to, we have what are called splice points. These are places where you can connect or interconnect into the system. We use Verizon central offices here on the Cape. We've chosen some of those because there are already good communications there in a lot of cases. So we want to enhance that as well. So we do go into most of the central offices here on the Cape to, again, so now the Verizon network is made stronger if they want to use our fiber, or if we needed a resource from them, we can get it from them.
Now, my other question was, there was a development of a plan to meet with the delegation, the legislative delegation, somewhere to brief them on the status of Opencape. Is that still in the planning stage, or has the date set? Teresa was working.
Yes,
on
I think a date has been established, but it escapes me right now as to what it is. I think it's toward the end of the month.
And I have a question. So now you're going to be doing the fiber optics and getting them in there. And there's construction going on in the Cape. There's roads being done, or however. How do you get the word out to any department that if there is a road open or an access that you might be able to use to lay fiber in? How are you?
We have tried to communicate that really to the towns and things,
yeah.
But it's very difficult for us unless something is known now to go into it, because again, there's a whole process you have to go through to install it or get access to it. So it's the same thing's true when you go on a pole or when you go underground, and Verizon may have conduit there.
Right.
So we have to apply to them to get access into that conduit. If it's not there and we need to create new conduit, we will do the construction under permit for the town. And at that point, we would hope, if they had it underground or they were planning it, maybe we could coordinate that activity.
Right.
But that'll be come about, I think, more directly in the permitting process of if we're going to actually have to dig new ground to put conduit.
To piggyback on what Sheila is talking about, in the town of Harwich, for example, I happened to be there when they were talking about opening up a couple of streets in order to put in some underground conduit and gas lines. And I asked about whether or not they would put in some open conduit which would allow some cable to be put in afterwards. And they said they wouldn't do it because they didn't have any money for it. But there are two places that you might want to communicate with. One is you're in the Cape Cod Commission now, and one of the issues of mitigation on improvements is certainly part of that. If you could offer them some way of using your access to funds to, put that in there, that might be useful. The other piece is that the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Department of Transportation are the ones that are putting these different projects together, and you might want to communicate that specifically to Priscilla LeClaire over at the commission, so that she's aware that there's a possibility of using your access to funds for putting in conduit in some of these places when they're opening up the street. It's been disappointing to me that that seems to be the piece that's left out, because you only have to open up the street once. You should put in all of the
Right.
potential utilities of that.
Once
And the issue really is when you're planning the project, studies that I've seen say it's a 1% increase on a project if you're already opening the street to throw a 4-inch. I know a fella out in, I think New Mexico has built a company on following around backhoes. I think I've told you this before.
Yeah.
And he sees a backhoe going down the street, he pulls him over and says, "Where are you going?" The guy says, "Well, I'm digging a trench from here to here." He said, "Would you mind if I threw some conduit in there?" And he's built a 60-mile network in New Mexico, just following around backhoes. So
Well, then
those
you
kinds
would
of
give
things,
staff
I think if you think about it at the
follow.
planning stage, you can add a 1% increase to the plan to say, "Can we bury the conduit?"
Well, you're residing in the planning department for Barnstable
Yeah.
County,
Right.
and I certainly hope that you bring that to the attention of.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all.
Well, I'm not sure that they are, because I sit on the MPO and I've never heard, Priscilla or Glenn or anybody else talk about
Yeah.
the availability of this particular resource. So I think it would be useful if you did tell me that.
I do talk to the folks on the transportation side about intelligent transportation systems. They are very interested in, obviously. How do you communicate with motorists, whether in a scenario where you're evacuating and you want them to go to shelters, or frankly, even out at the National Seashore, the National Park Service is interested in how do we just communicate to people that the parking lots are full, down to sensors on the road to detect ice and things like this. They have a fairly extensive process they've been going through, and we include ourselves in that.
Okay, the RTA does have a smart, intelligent transportation network, in that you can see where the
The
buses
buses are, yeah, and that's
Okay.
part of intelligent transportation in
Right,
general.
so
Yeah.
are you in communication with?
Those folks, yeah.
Okay, so you know Tom Cahere and all
Yeah.
that, so he's
Yeah.
aware of what you're doing. Because we're talking about improving that system, today, in order to make it more useful.
Sure.
So I think it would be important, you stay in touch with them.
Yeah, and in fact, last year, I know we talked a lot with the Volpe Center in Boston from the Department of Transportation, was doing a big study. We met with them several times to talk about where our network's going and those kinds of things, because all of these little devices that you might want to put out there to track buses and these different things need to communicate somehow. So how do you interlink them with our network to carry them around the whole Cape? So we had a lot of engagement.
And if you're
with them.
talking to NSTAR, one of the issues for a distribution system, especially an overhead distribution system, is the vulnerability that overhead systems have to unscheduled outages. And I don't know about the Cape, but most overhead distribution systems have fault monitors that are on it, so you can figure out where your outage or where your breaking has occurred. And the availability of some type of a fiber system might enhance the ability to do that tracing from a central office, as opposed to sending a truck out to see how many.
Well, I can actually give you some probably very useful information on that regard. So Opencape has a memorandum of understanding with NSTAR already.
Okay.
We are currently negotiating some contracts with them. NSTAR has a $10 million Department of Energy grant for smart grid on Cape Cod.
Yes.
Their goal in that grant is to reduce from what can sometimes be 10,000 homes being outage on the Cape in an incident to under 100 homes in any given incident. And the way they are going to do that is just precisely as you just described, by monitoring the switching and managing that switching from an isolated location.
Yeah.
So Senator Kerry's spoken a lot about this with us. The synergy between our fiber optic communications network and smart grid is tremendous. So we are working on an agreement with NSTAR now that we are actually going to go on some of their subtrains into the energy slot on poles rather than the communication slot, and give them fiber optics from our network that they can use to monitor and switch their power when there is an outage, so that only a minimal number of homes are affected in the future. It's quite an interesting project. And one of those infrastructures, like us, energy is essential. It needs to be reliable for businesses to thrive. So that's what the Smart Grid project and the $10 million DOE grant they have is all about. But we're working together to get the biggest bang out of both grants by working together.
Right.
That's wonderful.
That's excellent.
Because the next step on that, of course, is that we'd like to apply smart grid to residential consumers.
Yes, that's the next step.
But it does require that they have capacity in order to tie into
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. So we're building the highway, but eventually those off-ramps to your homes, they'll come.
Right.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
exciting.
but it's-
Yeah, great.
Well, thank you, and once again, let me thank you all for, one, your hospitality, and two, for this lease, which is a very important factor in us moving forward with the project. Again, it's essential that we all work together on this. I think we've proven that we are doing that, and let's look forward to our future success when we get it built.
I'd like you to think about coming back in about 6 months to give us an update.
I would be more than welcome, happy to do that.
Great. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thanks, Dan.
It's always fun when
Thank
you
you,
come.
Dan.
It's positive. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Should I take a copy of the lease with me now?
Yeah, good, you can, it's all.
I have to execute them, I will do it and hand it right back to
You
you.
can execute them if you want.
I will do that, and hand it right back to you. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
great.
Thanks again.
Yeah, we don't want to hold that up anymore.
Okay, let's see. We've done the, we've done the needs action already. There's an award for golf, I guess that's all in there. Golf course materials, that's something separate? We already voted on it.
We voted on
Yeah.
that, we got them signed, and Mark, we were going to talk about something in executive session.
What was that?
Are we going to do that?
No, I just want,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you're all aware of that we got a complaint, right?
Yes.
Okay. I sent out I said last week, given you all the material, do you have any opinion about it? Or would
Bye,
you-
Dan.
would-
Bye,
would it-
Dan, thank you.
I guess what I'm looking for is that I'd be happy to, to send out essentially the letter that I had suggested as a cover letter with the material from the HRC to Mr. Dieter.
Right, I know Beth weighed in on that with,
Yeah, in my summary, if you read the summary, essentially incorporates that.
right.
Okay, do you have any, is it okay if I just send them? Send it
Yeah,
back?
I didn't have a problem with it, did you, Pat?
Did you, Pat? Okay, I'll take care of it then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's,
I don't remember what you were talking about, Sheila. So,
no, this is the complaint we got from Bill.
no, I know what you're talking about.
We have to have a reason for going into
Bill.
executive session.
Do we have it?
Bill Clark.
Oh, yeah, we wanted to talk about a potential property negotiation.
Yes.
Would it be useful if we just went through these others first, because it's
Yes.
just simply simple things that
And
we
then
could
do
do.
That would be
last.
fine, and we'll do that last.
Okay. Let's see, what have you all been up to?
You don't want to know.
Enough of that. Okay, Sheila, do you want to share?
I attended the Power and Aging Symposium on transportation. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay. When I got there, they were having some,
Was that the
Leave it.
Beverly people, Beverly whatever?
it was up at,
Albuquerque?
it was at the Barnstable,
Barnstable Senior Center.
Senior Center,
And
right.
the gerontology expert was there from UMass
yes,
Boston.
yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I couldn't stay because I had another meeting to go to, and it ran longer because I was going to go back to it. So I knew they were in a,
I came in at the end and talked to the transportation coordinator on that meeting.
okay.
And got some material on it.
Yeah, I have mine in my car as well.
The interesting thing was that they haven't differentiated between frail elders and healthy elders, which seems to be a sticking point as far as services.
Yeah.
But Tom Cahere told me this morning that it's his intention, based upon what he heard, to get Cape Cod Transportation to be one of those top 5 producers. Of course, I suggested we do a field trip to Hawaii, which is on that list, but
Then I'm in.
but in any case, the whole point was that they pointed out that by 2020 we would have 70% over 55.
Yes.
And we are, we are the oldest county in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I pointed that out quite a bit this summer. We are the oldest county, demographically speaking, in New England. And maybe we're up there pretty much in the
Is
country.
wisdom going to come with age, Sheila?
So, there's always hope, though. There's always hope. But Yeah, so I mean, it is an issue that we have to really start thinking about, because although many people, and I guess we'll include ourselves, that who are growing older are fortunate enough, there's a lot of people that have a very healthy lifestyle here, but there is a day that it comes. As my uncle said, you're getting old, but all of a sudden, there it is, you're old. And you get problems, you get ailments, and we have to be able to have services to reach those people. So I think this is at least, it looks like there's a lot of things happening at the same time. When you look at Opencape and you look at people dealing with transportation issues, and certainly with Mr. Cahere there, he's doing a very focused, forward job. He's really trying to look to the future. And, all of the different things that we're looking at here on the Cape are huge. And, our wastewater, the wind, the energy, I mean, there's very big things that we're going forward on, and it's all happening, it seems, at the same time, and it's probably because the ability, is there and the will. But, I'm just glad that they're focusing on those transportation issues. I wasn't able to listen as long as I would have liked to have.
Well, what
people.
Tommy Cahere asked me to do, since I'm
He
much
was there
older
the
than
whole
you
time,
are,
he was there very good.
he asked me to discuss some of his, some of the issues, because I am on the RTA, as to what we could do to go forward to improve our public transportation network to support, the elders on Cape Cod.
Right.
So we'll be getting together, and I'll keep you advised as to what we find out on it, because it is an important issue. One of the interesting things about our public transportation that we found out today is that we've seen a significant improvement on public transportation usage over the last years. It's up almost 20%.
Yeah.
And which means that our revenue's up, which means it's getting, although I think it will approach us, it's getting to that area. But we are not seeing the use of fixed route service by elders that we had thought we would see when we were putting the Blue Head Brigade, bus service together. The kids have been supporting it more than the elders.
Right.
And so what we're...
And people who are working.
Yeah. So we're hoping that with this information from this group and looking at it to see how we can incentivize more seniors to use it. Because what was the figure that I was told that it's like seniors are 10 years beyond still needing support for transportation, 10 years beyond the time that they could drive.
Right.
Yeah, so that's I think that's an important thing for us as we age down here.
And having been a geriatric social worker and have done much work with people who are vision impaired and hearing impaired, to be vision impaired it's very bad to be hearing impaired as well, but vision impaired isolates you. You can always get in your car, whether you can hear the sirens coming down behind you or not, I mean you're hearing impaired. But when you have to rely on someone to give you a ride, it is very depressing to the human spirit, and very isolating. So those are things that we have to address. There is a gentleman from Harvard, his name is escaping me, but he was in one of the small groups of the Power and Aging looking at transportation that I attended, and he had experience in providing sort of like offline transportation. I think it was in Massachusetts, but in a different area. And he was very good. He had really some good ideas. So, I mean, he's in on that group, so I'm sure that they'll be hearing from him. But he was successful at it, and he knows why. I mean, he's not saying that he was any genius. It was just the timing was right and the situation was right. But he has good ideas going forward. So there's good people there.
It's an important regional service.
It's absolutely.
And it's something that we need to address. So
absolutely.
I'm glad you went. Pat,
yeah, I stopped him there.
You can. I think I know one subject you don't want to talk about, but there might be others that you do. What's going on with the Cape Cod Commission?
Well, that's what I was going to say. The subcommittee, you probably read in the paper, did pass the draft of the regulations for wind turbines, the minimum performance standards. And has been forwarded to the full commission, which will take it up tomorrow at its meeting at 3 p.m.
Right.
And I think that would be very helpful.
And depending on how that's passed on there, I think that this is an opportunity, instead of just going before the assembly, the way they usually do, coming from the commission, where the full presentation is given, and all of those commissioners are very educated to the issue on both sides, and then they make their decision. The Assembly doesn't always get afforded that. The situation is conveyed to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee relates. I think, I would like to suggest to the speaker that they devote a day to that presentation, one of those meetings, to that presentation. Let the public come in and hear, let everybody hear, and let the delegates actually have a full understanding and not just what they're hearing from one side or another as to why this is good or bad, but they can actually have their own conception of it and hear people's testimony and then come back to it 2 weeks later and make their vote. I think it would be better for them, and it would be better for the public, because it's a very important issue, and it shouldn't just have a knee-jerk vote done on it.
I had gone over to the Cape Cod Commission and asked them, the commission members, to reach out to the Assembly members and tell them, to share with them for their town how they had addressed an issue. And I did the same thing with the Assembly, asking them to reach out to the commission member in their town,
Right.
so that after the vote was taken, they could have an understanding as to what was the reasons and the thoughts that the commission member had to support his vote, because I think that would inform the Assembly members. The Assembly does not have as strong a committee system as the Cape Cod Commission does, and I think that the Assembly members could benefit from gaining that, let's say, from taking advantage of what I would call a more in-depth investigation that the Cape Cod Commission makes.
Right, and I agree, and I think that those lines of communication should be fostered and worked on. However, on an issue like this, where there are a lot of components and it's based on a lot of information over years collected, these aren't just willy-nilly, numbers that are thrown out there, that if they can get the whole picture of why these setbacks were, how they were arrived at, what was the rationale, what were the studies, then they could go home and chew on that for a while and look if there's anything they need to look up, they
Indeed,
can and ask
that's what the Cape Cod
questions.
Commission members do.
Right, that is what the Cape Cod Commission members do, but the Assembly should have that same opportunity, especially on big issues like this. This is big stuff.
I do want to make one comment about what's currently occurring in Falmouth. And I think the major problem for the town to be able to respond at this point, when the neighbors chose to go the regulatory route, the regulatory route through the ZBA, which is really a legal route, it kind of put everything on hold. I mean, when you have to wait then for that determination to be made before you can really move further. And I know I talked to one of the neighbors yesterday, and I think they understand that. And we're really talking about a very few number of people who are affected by this. And it's something will be done and needs to be done. And I think the town will be prepared when the ZBA makes this decision tomorrow night to be able to move forward to the next step and be able to resolve some of these issues for the people who live there. I have no doubt that will happen. And the unfortunate thing with this so-called letter, where the news today said that the town was flawed in its
That's
in
what
the
the
study.
article said.
No,
The
what
headline
happened-
said that, but the article didn't say
No,
that.
I know.
The headline always
What
says
happened
something
was
more
that
catchy.
the state just turned around and adopted a different set of standards, what they call the NCE standards, which is noise, I forget, it's a company.
Noise control engineering.
Noise control engineering. They all of a sudden adopted their standards and notified the town and said, these are the standards now, so we want you to redo your study and analysis.
Is this called an unfunded mandate?
Well, I don't know, but it just happened very abruptly. Unfortunately, the letter went to the Board of Health instead of to the town manager's
They don't know where you
office.
live.
Huh?
The state doesn't know where you are?
I don't know. Well, I'm just telling you that they adopted a different set of standards, and that's really what that was all about. So, and the town obviously is going to respond. I mean, that's what you do, you respond. So, and it's very difficult, I know, for a lot of people, but it can be done, it can be resolved. Hopefully there will be some mitigation that can occur, whatever. I mean, there are any number of forms of mitigation that can be looked at. So I feel very confident that the town will deal with this, we'll listen to it, we'll respond to it, and then we'll come up with a resolution.
I
By
have,
the way, there seems to be no place on this document to sign, so I'm not sure
I think
exactly.
it's a state
I think there's,
contract.
I have
No,
more fun
I-
things to,
Oh, no, that's right, it was almost like attached to another.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what, I think
Is it
this
part
is
of
one
something
where
else?
you are ratifying my signature.
Oh, is that, so what do we do, just initial it?
You can just initial it next to me.
I have a more fun thing to report. I went to the conservatory reception last, was it Wednesday?
I went to the one the
Thursday,
following
Thursday.
night.
Okay, you want to film?
Yes, and I regret
Wasn't
that I
great
missed
fun?
that.
The kids were wonderful as far as the kids that were playing, and it was really a fun time.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I
Judy
was
Cicero
announced.
was working,
I know.
was looking for you.
She told me all about me,
Okay.
and I
As a matter of fact, she beat me up saying, where were you?
where was I? That's
Yeah,
right.
like
I'm
I'm
glad
supposed-
somebody's looking out after me.
No chatting, we gotta focus on the agenda.
Okay, all right. And,
Okay.
Okay, the other thing is that I'm now the chairman of the Cape Light Compact.
Oh.
That was made last Wednesday. And
Congratulations.
Yeah, right. And
I'm gonna forward everybody that talks to me to you.
you can do that.
I don't know how I missed that,
I guess
that
that's,
conservatory. I guess it just didn't get on my calendar. This is where I wish we had scheduled her on those types of things. But and if we can make them, we can make them. If we can't, we can't. But
You know, I think at some point, whether it's, probably not today because it's not on the agenda, but we should really deal with the issue of the vegetative management.
yes, well, it's on the schedule for next week.
Oh, it's on for
yeah,
next week.
It's on the
Okay.
agenda for next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a report for next week.
It will be.
Yes, it's on the
I
agenda
know,
for next
I'm
week.
on
We
there.
told everybody.
And it's gonna be in the morning, right? So
Yeah, because you wanted to start at 9, right?
I have to. I have to
Not next week?
11. Yeah, 11,
Okay,
11:30 at the
so
latest.
we're planning to, and I think at that time, we're expecting to hear from Paul Wiki as well with regard to let's say, a preliminary stab at what would be necessary in order to do, to address the issue that the mission called for, which is to identify, I guess, the amount and kinds of chemicals that are used in support of this kind of activity on the Cape, both in, let's say, commercial and in residential. So you're going to fill in some of the gaps.
I'm going to
on
fill
that.
you in on all the gaps on that, and hopefully I'll have other good stuff to report, because I've been talking to a lot of people in the last few days that are not just citizens, but,
Okay.
Next steps.
and next steps, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we,
I
We-
I would
Executive-
like to request that we go into an executive
Excuse me,
session.
no,
for
before
the
we do
purpose.
that, do you have a report to make?
The only thing I
Oh, yeah.
was going to mention today is I am going over to the assembly. I'm going to go at 3:30 and set up. I'm doing the Finance 101 to the Assembly of Delegates today, so.
What else is on their agenda today? Are they going to meet the new clerk today?
They're going to elect the
The-
new clerk. Yeah.
Or not?
Is that all?
Well, we have a new person. They've done the interviews. Everybody was happy with who was involved in the interview process. She's a very strong candidate, so
Okay, is this the first time they hold assemblies meeting?
I have no idea, Bill. I've not been involved in their process.
Yeah, we've hired them, right?
No,
Is
yes.
she on the payroll?
yeah.
I don't know if the personnel paper was in there or not. I
I
don't
think it was
know.
last week. I
think it was last week. But it's dependent on them electing her.
Yes. Okay. All right, do we have anything else?
No, I would like to move that we go into an executive session to talk about a property transaction,
Real property
and
negotiation.
and we will follow,
Real
we will
property.
come out of executive session into a recess, which
To go
will
to
be
the assembly.
continued when we meet at the assembly.
I'll second that.
All right. Lions,
Okay?
By roll call.
Oh, yes, Lions Eye.
Flynn, aye.
Doherty, aye.